All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I am so excited. I know I say that every single week, but I genuinely am excited every week to sit down and host another edition of the Weekly Member Spotlight. Today is very special because we have a very special guest, someone who I had the privilege of meeting and having an opportunity to work very closely with for a small moment in time. Mr. Clark Ebbert, who is the Director of Conference and Education Programs for the National Apartment Association. And while Clark may or may not be a familiar face to you, I'm sure you are the beneficiary of many of the things he's responsible for with the National Apartment Association. And he's just an extremely interesting person. I think we could have talked for an hour before even going live for this video. But we're excited to sit down today. Clark, thank you for stepping in with somewhat of a quick notice to join us today for this initiative.
Oh, Melissa, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to get to spend some time with you. That's often pretty rare. And I get excited about Fridays as well. I hope that you have some relaxation and rejuvenation time just ahead of you, like right on your doorstep.
Listen, I don't know how this happened, and I don't even feel like saying it out loud is appropriate, but I have designed my day. This is going to be a first Friday in a very long time that I have a pretty open afternoon. So I'm very excited, and a long weekend. So looking forward. You're in DC, right?
I am in your nation's capital. Yes, ma'am.
You are in lovely, snowy, I'm sure, DC. What's the weather like up there today?
It's been cold here. We don't usually get super cold weather. There have been bouts, and then they sort of get separated as things warm up. But Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week, there have been 3 storm fronts that are rolling in. So it's a little frosty. It's a little moist.
Mm-hmm. I think we've gotten pieces of those weather fronts that have moved through DC in the Midwest, and we've got another one on the horizon for next week. So it is very cold. It is very unpleasant outside, and about 6 or 8 inches of snow packed from our events there. Yeah.
So, I don't always think that, I tell myself that winter can't be over until it happens. And so this is the happening part. And soon it will be. Yeah, you have to have the cold and the snow and the gray. It's part of the whole seasonal process.
It is. Well, good perspective. And that's exactly right. To have the flowers, you have to have the rain. It's funny. I posted, I know you're a theater person by nature, which I'm excited to talk to you about, but I don't know if you're a musical theater person. I am a huge musical theater fan. And last year, this weekend, like the Valentine's Day weekend, I saw Les Mis in Cincinnati. And so I had posted a bunch of stuff on my social media leading up to that. And yesterday I had posted the quote, "Rain will make the flowers grow." So you talking about that perspective reminded me of that. So what I'd love to do, Clark, because again, I'm not sure if our members or if the folks watching this know you as a familiar face, I'd love to ask you just to take a moment, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for NAA.
Sure. So I have just celebrated my 7th anniversary with the National Apartment Association. My job, my title is Director of Conference Education, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor of putting together all the breakout sessions and content really that happens at all of our live and virtual events throughout the year. Most people are most aware of our Apartmentalize, which I call the meeting of the tribe. And in its last successful iteration, we had more than 11,000 attendees.
Wow.
Of course, that didn't happen in 2020, and we pivoted to virtual. But we had more than 5,000 people on the virtual platform. We had 77 programs to offer. We had 5 game changers, which are our paid speakers. Mm-hmm. That was an interesting professional experience to add to my resume.
I bet.
Yeah, and so now we're actually I'm working on 2 projects right now. I'm working on Apartmentalize for 2021, And I'm also working on something that we call NAA Digital Studio, which is a half-day event. They happen quarterly. And we collaborate with some of our sponsor companies to produce content and an experience for particular targeted audiences.
Give an
So
example. What would one of the subject matters of an event
yeah,
be?
so we have an event coming up on February the 25th, and it's maintenance focused.
Okay.
And we are working in collaboration with Lowe's Pro Supply.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really talking about sort of how maintenance teams are managing on the ground, what protocols they're using. We'll be discussing whether or not they have full access to get their work done. If not, sort of how are they planning? What strategies are they using to tackle the glut of work that may be building up?
Right.
And then also some more philosophical questions like what have people learned during the last year that we want to take forward with us?
Yes.
And what are we most looking forward to leaving behind?
Very interesting. I hope those responses are somehow distributed. That would be interesting perspective, especially from our frontline maintenance team, hearing what the feedback is.
I met with the panelists yesterday to sort of part of my job is, you know, I get teams of people together and we kind of mutually we have some conversation, and then we step back and we add some organization, like we figure out what the conversation will cover and how we're going to structure it, kind of like the architecture of it. And we're kind of at that point now. And I was meeting with the panelists, and I jokingly said, you know, I asked them that question, like, what has your experience taught you this year?
Mm-hmm.
If you say nothing, you need to go to your room and think about it. Because
Right.
we've all sort of been through this hugely profound experience.
And it feels like not just one experience, but multiple experiences that, even if standing alone, would have been life changing.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about some of the things that happened in 2020, independent of COVID, there were at least two things I think that standing alone would have been as impactful as it all has been together. So that's interesting. I like that very much, and I'm not familiar with that format. So thanks for bringing me up to speed. I'm going to look into that. And you said they go quarterly.
They go quarterly. So the first one is on April the 25th. It's complimentary. And so people are welcome to send their maintenance teams. It's more focused for maintenance supervisors and operational minded folks, not so much for technicians, although they would benefit from gaining the perspective, the supervisor's perspective. And then in April, we have an event coming up. We're working with our partners at Yardi. And we think it will be operations focused. And we're still developing the theme for that one. Oh, and then I should also mention that, so Apartmentalize normally is a June event.
Yes.
And we have recently announced that we're moving it a little later in the summer to September, or August 30th, 31st through September the 2nd.
Yeah.
So that's a significant, what's that?
City? Which city?
Oh, it's in Chicago.
Chicago, yes.
Yeah, the great Midwestern city of Chicago up on the Great Lakes. It's a great destination.
It is.
We think that by moving it to later in the summer, more people will feel more confident about traveling, and we will be able. We think more people will just feel free to attend.
Yeah.
On the other side, you know, we're also my team is working very hard with the Chicago Convention Center to take into account all the health concerns. So the space allotment that we have, we're planning at only 25% of capacity.
Really?
So right now, we're looking at spreading people out and keeping 6-foot distance.
Nice.
We are spreading out sessions so that there's room for crews to come and fog and spray down the rooms.
Yep.
So that people come in one door and go out another. There is a sanitizing process, and then we sort of repeat that. So there are all these new layers of considerations to take into account. But I mention that because the event will only take place if we feel confident that that people can attend without compromising their health.
Right. Well, I can tell you as an operator, I was excited to see that it is still actively in the plans. I feel confident pushing it out a little bit further. And I was talking earlier to you that I think Chicago is just a really great central destination, and it's easy to get to. And just so many options of flying in or driving in. I mean, I'm from Cincinnati, and so it's like a 4.5 hour drive for me should I choose to drive that. And it's just, it feels reasonable. So very much looking forward to it. And I do know, Clark, what you are capable of, because I've had the privilege of attending some of the events that you have directly put together. And I know Denver, the last one that was really live and in person, was a great event. And the year before Denver was San Diego, right?
Yes.
That was great. And San Francisco is great, and Vegas is always great. So these events are just absolutely incredible. And I think I speak confidently for those of us on the operations side of this business. We are excited to get back. We are excited to get together with our colleagues and our peers who are active in this industry to move ahead. I think there's a lot to reflect on. I think compartmentalize. I'm sure the content will be somewhat geared toward what have we learned and what are we going to take, forward with us, kind of the question that you're directing to the maintenance team later this month. But I'm really excited for human interaction and industry collaboration. So thanks for that update.
Yeah, I always call compartmentalize the meeting of the tribe.
Right.
It's where the industry is vast, and it encompasses a lot of people and a lot of different work situations and circumstances. But it's so celebratory.
Right.
It's hard
really
to describe to people who have not experienced the event just how lovely it is to be with all those human beings who share a focus.
It really is. And as vast as our industry is, it's also such a small world in this business. And it's truly unspeakable how many times paths have crossed, regardless of geography. There's something about this industry that has this pool, and we all sort of find our way back to each other at some point in time. So that's been a very incredible experience to be part of over 2 decades. Especially the longer you're in it, the smaller it becomes. So and I do think the benefit of this virtual environment has also been creating a little bit of a smaller space. We used to be doing these interviews in person exclusively, Clark, so I wouldn't have had the opportunity necessarily to sit down with you like this. And I've the honor of talking to a few other people at the NAA and a few other people at affiliate associations, and it's just made the world a little bit of a smaller place. And for that, I've been grateful to talk one-on-one in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do.
There are some benefits to it. I feel like we expand the reach. Like our virtual events are either free or much less expensive than the face-to-face version.
Yeah.
I mean, face-to-face it's the best. And I miss it so much, and I can't wait to get back to that. But virtual is what we have to work with. And we've all become experts this year at using what we have.
That's right.
from the place where we happen to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that some of the benefits are that you expand your reach. Yeah. You get to farther corners of the country, and I also think that there are people out there who are more introverted, and this is kind of like a dialed down, energetically it's dialed down and perhaps more palatable. I'm clearly an extrovert.
Evidence by your random fun fact that I can't wait to talk about.
I don't think anybody would ever be surprised to hear me say that I'm an extrovert.
Yes.
But actually, let's talk about that a little bit more down the road, sort of
yes.
In terms of.
Sure. Well, I'm very excited to talk about you on a personal note. I have just a couple more things on a professional level as to the NAA and your experience in the industry. One thing that I always do in preparation for the interviews is I go make sure that I have your name correct and that I know how to pronounce it and that I have your title correct. And so when I went to look at your title on your email signature, I noticed that you used your pronouns in your email signature line. And I have seen that in so many different areas, not only in our industry, but in other areas of my life very recently. It feels like it's just become a more common theme. And I'd love to just ask you to elaborate on just the spirit of including your pronouns in your signature and how that kind of blends with the NAA's commitment to inclusion.
I love that you asked me that question. Thanks for giving me a chance to say a little something about it. Our leadership at NAA headquarters suggested that we consider including our pronouns in our email signatures as sort of a standard practice. And I was happy to do that. I think that we're at sort of a time in the world when we are acknowledging that it's important to hold space or allow other people to be different than us. And in particular, at this point in history, I think that especially younger people are less restrictive or binary about the way they think about gender.
Yeah.
Gender is a powerful thing in our society, and it really shapes us, especially as children. Boys are generally encouraged to play sports. Girls are generally encouraged not to play sports. And so as they grow up, that has deep implications about how people regard their bodies and like how they use their bodies and live in their bodies. So younger people are less binary about the way they think about gender, and there are transgendered people in the world. And I think that by including how you identify, how I identify, and what pronouns I prefer, I make space for other people to also include how they identify. It's just sort of, it's about sort of being generous.
Right.
And not being assumptive about other people and how they view themselves. And it gives us all an opportunity to say, this is how I see myself.
I love that explanation of giving people space. And I think we've all heard the words diversity and inclusion. And the fact that those words need to be in the forefront underscores how real it is for it not to be the norm. And so I found it fascinating. I was very interested in asking the spirit behind, that being in your signature line. And it's I think too, the more you see something or the more you look for something, the more you see it. I just feel like it's kind of everywhere now. And I've seen it on LinkedIn profiles, LinkedIn, even like the name in their heading, and so Twitter as well. And I just think that's very interesting. Thank you for that. And I very much appreciate that the NAA has made that a highly suggested act for all of their employees. And I look forward to hopefully one day joining the Diversity and Inclusion Committee there, because it's a subject very near and dear to me.
It's an important discussion. It doesn't really cost you anything to allow somebody else to be different than you.
Right.
So, Melissa, I went to massage school several years back, and I have a massage practice sort of as I do that on the side.
Yeah.
And I had this massage teacher who said something to me that's really profound. I want to share it with you.
Please.
He says, when I'm like out in the world and I see somebody and they kind of freak me out, or or they're really different than me, I've trained myself to say, well, that's another way to be.
I like
And it's a
that.
fun little trick because it separates you from them in the sense that I am not, you're really saying in that statement, I am not that, but it's cool that you are. And,
Right.
the way that you are doesn't really say anything about who I am. So,
Right.
like
I
in
like that.
that really simple statement, you give somebody else the space to be their glorious self that they are.
Right. And I feel like just in life, like all of us, I feel it is an intrinsic need to just be understood. Like you just want to be understood, appreciated, and valued for what you are. And the more people have to, you know, hide who you are or pretend you're something different, it just like it creates distractions that take away from all the other wonderful things that there are about life. I feel like I just learned something about you that was the final piece of the puzzle to complete my understanding of who you are, Clark. And it's why you are so calm and cool and collected. You have not only the training of performance, but you have the knowledge of massage and relaxation in your repertoire. So that is the final piece of the puzzle here for me. Like, no wonder he's
So,
so calm and collected and well.
no, well, not always, Melissa. I do have a game face.
Oh, well, I appreciate that you brought that today. Well, as it relates to the NAA, one of the questions and not just NAA, but your professional experience, I would love to ask people if there's a memorable story and or a piece of advice that you'd like to share that you kind of, earned growing up in this industry. And it sounds like you've been around 7 years is certainly long enough to have gained some perspective. But do you have a memorable story? We'll start with that, and then any advice to offer up for people who share a passion for the multifamily housing industry.
I don't know if I have a particular experience that I can relate to, but so when I plan events, I have to imagine who the audience is. Rule number one of communicating is know your audience. And so I'm like a very visual person, and my empathic skills are kind of high. And so the way I do that is I kind of have a picture of who the audience is. And in my brain, they're kind of like, it's a small group. It's almost one person that I can imagine. That person is like most likely a property manager, and more time, like 3 out of 4 times, our attendees are female. So I generally think of that as sort of in the female form, and they're with lots of experience. They perform within like a leadership structure where they have people that they communicate up to and down and down to. Down is not the best operative word there, but I always, yeah. So I think of the industry as my audience or my attendee, because that's my job function. But I also think that people who work in they're people who work in this industry, they are proud of their work. They have a general sense that what they do is benevolent and helpful to other people. I like to think that they create home for people. Hardworking, ambitious, not contained within the 9 to 5 structure, and service oriented, like living lives of service to other people. And then when I have that idea of them, like that's like somebody I would totally love to hang out with, and then that motivates me to make good programming for them.
That's interesting, and I think I feel like that was advice that you put out there, and especially appropriate if you are a salesperson or an operator. Knowing your audience is a very helpful piece of advice in every aspect of life. So I like that. I like that perspective. And I felt like you were describing me there for a second. I'm like, am I his target audience?
You kind of are.
I kind of am. I mean, There's nothing you said about me that I couldn't have. I checked all the boxes, I guess is the best way to say that. Well, I am very anxious to dive into the personal part of getting to know this. And I just, to share because I don't know how much I shared about this initiative with you as we were talking in preparation. But, we put this initiative together through our GCNKAA social media committee just to try to get our members to be a little more connected. It was years before the pandemic. It was actually in San Diego during the National Apartment Association conference. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was San Diego because we were on the Market Street. I feel like it was Market Street. There was a big street party and it was outside and the road was closed down. And I was standing out there and I was talking to people from my local apartment association. And I realized that I'd never had a personal conversation with them. Any communication had been about, what's going on with this property? And hey, how's it going? And oh, did you hear that this property sold? And it was very superficial. And I started talking to someone who I literally sat next to in a board meeting for 2 years. I knew nothing about him other than we'd been in the business the same amount of time, had, equal positions in different companies. And I was like, how is this possible? I've been associated with this organization my entire life. I'm sure I look around, all the people standing in this circle have been too, and I don't know anything about them. So in the social media committee that had just been started, we were talking about how can we get to know our members, not only their professional experience and expertise, which is all extremely important and fascinating, but who are you? Like, what do you do in your spare time? Because I'm a human being, you're a human being, and I'm pretty sure everyone we're interacting with is human beings. Like, let's celebrate that. So we put this initiative together and it's been so interesting to learn. I feel like, again, the massage piece of this, I've already learned something I would have never known about you otherwise. So let's use the last half of our interview just to get to know you a little bit better as a human being, independent of Clark Ebbert, who puts together these amazing conferences for the NAA. So I'd like to invite you, just start with your family. Tell us a little bit about how you grew up and your family.
Yeah, so I know you're an Ohioan. I grew up 20 miles from the Ohio line in Western Pennsylvania. It's a little place on the Ohio River called Aliquippa. Okay. It's a steel town, and my father was a steel worker. I'm the fourth of 5 siblings, and we're Irish Catholic. I come from very humble people, and I as a teenager, some of the circumstances of my geography and my family, it felt a little smothering to me. And right. So it propelled me as a young person to move to a big city. But I've been going back home to my clan is thick. Like we ever started, we're a very strong family. Yeah. And so I'm always going back to visit, and I'm always reminded about where I come from, which that's really special to me.
Yeah. So you moved from, and I can't pronounce the name of that city. Say it again.
Aliquippa,
Pennsylvania, to Columbus, Ohio. And what took you to Columbus?
So there were a bunch of steps in between there, but I went to Ohio State for graduate school, and I was in the dance department. I earned a Master of Fine Arts in Dance from Ohio State University in 1997. Wow.
That's incredible.
Excuse me. Yeah, it was.
Form of dance. Was there a form of dance that?
Yeah, it was contemporary dance, okay. And it was a 2-year program. I was in the university dance company, so I got to travel. We traveled in New England. I performed in Cincinnati.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a great time of my life. It was that world is sort of like, whenever you're in that world, it's all encompassing. You live, eat, and breathe it. And
right.
I would wake up at 7 o'clock, teach an 8 o'clock ballet class, have studios all day, like in the morning, technique classes, and then rehearsals at night. It was a great time. It was so exciting.
So one thing that I just find even more fascinating is that you are a trained performer, yet today you find yourself behind the scenes orchestrating these large events. How does that feel to kind of come out of the spotlight and organize and orchestrate something as big as an 11,000, person event?
Yeah, there's definitely a connection there. It's I don't think it would be readily evident to people. Um, I I think that as a young person, generally people who are in the arts, they they're very passionate about it, but they don't do really well. So I moved to Washington, D.C. because I got a job in a company, a professional dance company.
Uh-huh.
And I did that for about 3.5 years. And at some point I had an injury and I had to stop to let my body heal. And when I did that, I got a part-time job, and then I had regular income. And I was like, wow, buying groceries is really fantastic. My first year here was in 1988, and my the income tax return, my filing, I made $12,000 that year, which was below the poverty line. And although I didn't realize it at the time.
Yes.
So I think that I got interested in other things. Also, the dancing thing is interesting. Like you spend your entire day in front of a mirror looking at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, so dancing taught me some amazing things. It taught me how to be on time. It taught me how to be there for other people. It taught me a lot of things like issues of trust, about precision, self-discipline. But there was also a part of it that was, very self-involved. And I think that when I at some point in my life, I changed directions because that was a little too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, very interesting. I find that very interesting. How did you get into dance as a young person?
That's a great question. So, when I was a kid, I would watch, I remember the summer that Grease, the musical, came out on HBO. I was transfixed. Like I sat in front of the television with a bucket of popcorn the entire summer.
Oh,
and
wow.
my family made fun of me because they're like, Clark's watching Grease again.
Yeah.
And I kind of love the joyousness and the freedom that those people seemed like they were experiencing. And I was always somebody who had like excessive energy in my body. Like I was kind of a spastic kid who couldn't sit still.
Yeah.
So I always thought that was a really exciting thing. And I didn't really take my first dance class until I was a sophomore in college.
Really?
Yeah, my dad was a steel worker, and I didn't think he would love his son going off to dance class, and I was sensitive about that. But by the time I was in college, I thought, this is something that I really want to do. So I took one class, and that led to several more. And then after college, I had a job, and there were a couple of people at my job who were in this community dance company at the community college. I said, I mentioned just casually, oh, I studied a little bit of dance, and they're like, you should come to rehearsal. So I showed up one day to rehearsal, didn't know, it was really scary. I remember walking into that room the first time. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I went to the back of the room, and I just looked around, and I tried to do what everybody else was doing.
Yeah.
And then, later that year, I was in my first concert, and then 2 years later, I met somebody who recruited me to audition at Ohio State, and
wow,
I got a full scholarship to go to graduate school.
Really? Wow, so you must have had some natural talent to go along.
Yeah, I did. I wish then, when I look back on that, I was like, oh, it's a little too hard on myself. I should have given myself some more credit.
So I have to ask the question, did life come full circle, and did you have the chance to be in a production of Grease?
No, I would not.
No?
No, well, so in, I think, 12 days, I'm going to have my 60th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And
On your
I have,
experience, you were never in that show?
I wasn't. In college, right before I headed off to Ohio State, I had a stint in some summer theater at Berea College outside
Okay.
of Cleveland, and
Yep.
um, I was in one of the first non-equity productions of A Chorus Line.
Really? Aw.
That was a great summer. That was amazing.
What I Did for Love is the audition song that I sang for so many things. So many things. Um, we did a summer youth theater program in my area. And so
Mhm.
I watched it growing up. I was too young to participate. I think I was probably in seventh or eighth grade. And you had to be a high schooler. But our summer youth community did Grease. And I didn't sit in front of the TV watching it with buckets, but it's certainly one of those shows that you're like, if you're a theater person, if you're a performer, if you're a lover of music, like that is probably one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, no, I would. So I know some people now who are in the arts who are young people. Like my friend Dan Roberge is in the Washington Ballet. And
Nice.
so I get to go to all the galas and I know a bunch of the dancers and it's kind of fun to like circle back around
Yes.
and socialize with those people because I lived in that world and there are only like 50 people.
Right.
I'm being silly, but
Right.
um, yeah. So it's fun to watch them and remember when I was of that frame of mind, and also to enjoy them and watch them sort of live their passion and do these amazing things with their bodies.
Well, I didn't mean to cut you off. You were saying that you are about to celebrate your 60th birthday and you were
Yeah.
saying something. I didn't want to lose that thought. Maybe it was just
Oh,
that.
so yeah. So I think like being, I don't know that I can't really move like that anymore. I have found ways to so I'll actually indulge in this for a little bit. So one of the byproducts of being a professional dancer is that by the time I was 52, I needed hip replacements,
Oh,
and I got new hips.
yeah.
Actually, this time around 8 years ago, the right side was February the 6th, and the other side was February the 13th. I had them done like a week
Really?
apart.
Oh, wow.
Um, and it was a really intense personal experience. It was very isolating and humbling. But when I came out the other side of the surgeries, I had this really cool physical therapist, and um, she made a huge impression on me. And I just remember having this moment where I thought, "Wow, she's helping me in this profound way, and I would love to help somebody like that." And that's kind of where I got the impetus to go to massage school. When I came out of physical therapy, I went back into the gym because all of a sudden I was able to exercise and really inhabit my physical vessel again because I was pain free from the surgeries.
Wow.
So that experience was kind of a return to the body,
Yeah.
to the vessel. Um, and I took to the massage instruction because I had been a dancer and I already understood anatomy and
Mm-hmm.
physiology and
Mm-hmm.
kinesiology. And I was able to make that connection. So there's kind of a full circle kind of thing that happened there. So me and my sparkly, shiny titanium hips aren't up for a summer stock version um, of
Fair
Greece,
enough.
but I'll buy a ticket. I'll bring my friends. I'll applaud
There you
loudly.
go. Fair enough. I was actually on the board of directors for our local summer youth theater as a younger
Uh,
person, and I thought I didn't appreciate because I was probably lamenting about not being on stage at that time. But like I often think about as I get older and want to give back more, I would love to be part of some organization or outlet for that kind of creativity. The Not only the experience but the camaraderie with the small group of people, like you said, the 50 people in the world that like share that passion. It's just it's a connection like none other. I think for theater, for performance, and band was the same for me in marching band and things like that. But it's just this, it's really interesting group of people. The friends that I've had the longest came from that group of people too. So I love that about you. And it's so interesting. I would have never guessed that. And in the interaction that I've had with you, which has obviously been limited, I wouldn't have guessed you were such the extrovert. So again, the great thing about having these kinds of discussions. Um, I'd love to ask you, what do you do in your free time these days, if you have any?
Like in the now time or in the before
Yeah,
time?
what's your hobby like today? If you were looking for some mindless, fun, relaxing activity for yourself today.
Yeah, so I have a Harley Davidson that I love to ride. It's a little cold
Wow.
right now.
Yes.
And it's garaged over the winter, but I belong to a riding club called the Spartans, and
Nice.
I was the president of the Spartans for the last 2 years. So
Wow.
that's always really fun, and it's a cool way to connect with other people, and it's dangerous and exciting, and a little bit obnoxious and a lot of fun. Um, I really like to cook. Uh, it's the most creative thing I get to do all day. I like to, I'm kind of just good enough where I don't need a recipe anymore. And I can I understand ratios and flavor profiles, and I'm more comfortable sort of stepping out of the box and making my version of something rather than following a recipe.
Right.
So I really like that. Um,
What are you known for? Like, what's your dish that you would put up against anyone?
I always think that, like people have like cooks have like 10 or 12 things they do really well because they've done them 100 times.
Uh huh.
I make a really good, it's kind of like a chickpea curry chicken coconut milk cauliflower stew kind of thing.
Wow.
It's really good.
That
Um,
sounds interesting
uh,
and appropriate
yeah,
on a
there's
cold day.
um, and what else do I make? I like making lasagnas and oh, I've been into like there's a cooking YouTube channel. There's this woman, Marion's Kitchen,
Okay.
and she lives in Australia, and she's half Thai and half Italian. Like her mom's Thai, her dad's Italian, and she makes all these noodle dishes.
Nice.
And I had to go and buy all of these ingredients that I don't have, like Szechuan peppercorns and crunchy garlic and chili oil and gochujang paste, which is a Korean fermented bean paste.
Wow.
But I like to watch it and see how she makes it, and then I love when she tastes it at the end because she makes you jealous with
Oh, that's funny. What is
at the
one of your
end.
favorite foods to indulge in?
Noodles, like noodles are good any day of the week, and I can make them. Something that I can't make that I would eat any day of the week would be sushi.
Nice. You can't, have you tried to master the art of making your own sushi?
No, that's like one of those things where like somebody will always do it way better, and then
Yeah.
there's also like the fish has to be really fresh,
Yes.
so I let
That's
somebody else do that.
the first rule of sushi, right? Well,
Yes.
are you much of a reader? And if so, what's one of the best books you've read of late?
So I just last night I was like I'm just finishing a novel I hadn't read for a long time. Um, and I found that it was difficult to read because of my digital life. My digital life
Right.
has made my attention span much shorter and multitasking. And so this past winter, I decided that I was going to retrain my mind to read a book on paper, like old
Nice.
school stuff. So
Wow.
I'm almost done with my first one. It took forever.
Yeah.
Um, it's called The Dutch House by Anne Patchett.
Okay.
Uh, and it's about a brother and sister who grow up with all these different circumstances. And how it's sort of about how much of their past they carry with them and how it limits them and how
I'm
the
gonna write
things,
this down.
yeah, it's really good.
I have made a list uh, probably 20, 30 books long from people sharing one of their favorites with me. And it's been incredible. I struggle in the same way to read a hard copy book, and I am a voracious reader. I have always been since I learned how to read. But I have kind of given in and started with the Audible concept. And so for the last few years, and it's just been, I want the like romance that goes along with holding a book and reading a book, and like thinking, you think differently when you read it versus hear it. And so, but I just couldn't finish or get to everything I wanted to. And so I'm putting this on my list. It sounds fascinating. Is it set in what time period?
It's in like modern times-ish, and it takes place in Philadelphia.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I just started a book called The Nightingale, which is I've read some books which is not mostly my style, that have been period pieces based either in World War I, II, and the book I'm reading now kind of is going back and forth between the two, and it's fascinating. I can't wait to have a little time this long weekend and cold weekend to listen to it. What about podcasts? Are you a podcast connoisseur?
Yeah. So I listen, like podcasts are like that's my road trip go-to.
Yes.
And I generally listen to This American Life. Um, and I listen to the Daily, the New York Times. It's called the Daily.
Got it. I have not listened to either one of those, so I made note of those too. Is there what genre does the first one fall into? I'm sure the
So
second.
This American Life, they're sort of folksy. They're interviews.
Uh-huh.
And they generally have three segments that follow some kind of overarching theme.
Uh-huh.
And it's sort of like it's sort of like a slice of Americana. It's about the American experience. And I like the way it's produced by NPR, and I like the way they put it together.
Nice.
And then the Daily is always it's new. It's hard news.
Right.
It's journalism. And as a young person, I remember like seeing my parents read the newspaper and being like, why is this so interesting? And now I know.
Listen, the first thing I did when I moved into my very first apartment when I was 18 years old, I subscribed to the Middletown Journal, my little hometown newspaper, and it was my favorite thing in life. And then to the internet was literally just kind of up and coming. I got my first apartment in 1995, and I remember the internet being a thing in like 97-ish is when it became like part of everyday life. And to have that information at your fingertips has always been to me just I'm constantly seeking information, and it's probably not good for my attention span, but I'm with you. And the thing about podcasts is to have something that's short enough that you can listen to and start and finish on a drive. It's interesting, and to have something to look forward to, the next episode and a series. So I like those too.
So if you're feeling like artsy and literary, there is something that I listen to from time to time, less these days, but the New Yorker magazine has a free podcast.
Oh, really?
Short fiction podcast.
Nice.
The construct is that they pick an author, and they have that author pick their favorite short story written by somebody else, and then they read it. So the New Yorker fiction editor has a little chat with the author, and they talk about what they're going to hear, and then the author reads their favorite author, and then they have a debrief at the end. So I like a little setup,
yeah,
and then the post game follow up.
I like that very much. I wrote that down too. Well, thank you very much. All right. Well, listen, our interview is getting lengthy. I want to be very respectful of your time. I still have a few questions that I want to ask you. Are you good to keep going for a few?
I have maybe 2 more minutes.
Okay. So in those 2 minutes, why don't you share with me, what I would love for you to do is talk about which TV character would you be and why? And then if there are any random fun facts we haven't already talked about.
I'm going to punt on the TV character because the TV that I watch is like Netflix and their movies,
Right.
or I watch a lot of YouTube.
Yeah. You said in your survey Don Draper from Mad Men.
Oh yeah, okay.
One of my, again, one of my favorites. I was like, I can't wait to talk about this.
Okay, so I would like to be Don Draper. I don't know that I am him, but it would be
Right.
great to be him. So the thing about that story was, first of all, he had a lot of style,
Right.
handsome as hell, like
Yeah.
um, really talented and smart. But he did this really weird thing throughout the whole series. Like these terrible things would happen, and he would just be like, and he would
You
move.
want to see you? Yep.
Yeah, he didn't drag any of that stuff forward with him. He had this way of detaching that I wish I had.
Do you know one of the most profound things that I've ever seen or heard in my life is in the season where Peggy gets pregnant by Pete and
Mm-hmm.
he visits her at the hospital and he's like, it never happened.
It never happened.
Shocked at how much it never happened. And I thought the same thing, like, if only I could clean my hands of some of the things that like drag you down. So I think that's fantastic and binge watched that show twice in my lifetime.
Yeah, he would be a good person to be. I don't think he exists in real life.
Right. Well, Clark, listen, I really appreciate your time. This has been so interesting, so fascinating. In addition, again, to all the great things you do for our industry and for the National Apartment Association to make sure we can come together and, have this outlet through a conference to learn and be educated and network with people in this industry is just the value is immeasurable. I'm so thankful to know you and have had the opportunity to experience your talent at work. But on the personal note, you're equally as fascinating, and it's been a great pleasure to get to talk to you. Thanks for your support with this initiative and giving me an hour of your time today.
You are extremely complimentary. But
it's the funnest part of my week. I love so much. Like
all kidding aside,
ride a Harley.
I love spending time with you. We had the chance to work together in Denver.
Yes.
It was Denver.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, that was in a group of many people, and I remember thinking that she is an extraordinary person. You really came through. You really challenged yourself. So that was a great experience. But it's nice to come back and reconnect again. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, get to know that we're all just human beings doing this crazy thing.
We are.
Okay, right?
Well, and we work for a great interest. We work for a great industry.
We absolutely do the best. I mean, and if that didn't get underscored in 2020, it will never be underscored. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And I will look forward to seeing you in August.
Yeah, I really look forward to that. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
Stay well. Stay balanced.
You too. Same. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care, Kim. Bye.